In 1994, 12 children boarded a bus for a field trip to Willow's Reach Lighthouse. They were never seen again. No footprints, no answers. Just silence. And a legend that haunted a town for decades. But this year, when a buried tunnel is uncovered after a storm, the truth begins to claw its way to the surface. And the light that was meant to keep them safe may have been the thing that trapped them all along. Before we begin, hit subscribe. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from tonight? Because sometimes the story finds you, no matter where you are. The storm rose from the sea without warning, a wall of black cloud blotting out the lighthouse beam. By midnight, wind and rain battered Willow's Reach so hard, the old-timers said it sounded like the end of the world. Thunder rolling in great, hollow booms, waves clawing at the rocky cliffs below the lighthouse. Somewhere between 2 and 4 a.m., as the village huddled in dark houses and the ocean pulled at their dreams, a piece of the bluff beneath the lighthouse gave way. Rock and earth slid into the sea, leaving a gash in the cliffside and a secret that had waited 25 years to be found. At dawn, Eddie Carson, fishing boat captain and town gossip, picked his way down the shattered path to the point. The storm had smashed half his lobster traps and turned the harbor into a graveyard of flotsam, but what caught Eddie's eye wasn't the driftwood or the tangles of dead kelp. It was a jagged patch of raw earth where there used to be nothing but moss and granite. Something glinted, a rectangle of rusted iron, half buried in dirt and just visible. The curve of a sun-bleached shoe. He squatted, peering closer, heart thudding. The iron wasn't just junk, it was a door. Heavy, old, pitted with age. The kind of door you found in war bunkers, not on a tourist cliff. It hung crooked on a single hinge, pulled open a crack by the shifting ground. A black void yawned behind it. Fog from the sea poured in, cold and alive. Eddie, never one to let common sense outweigh curiosity, reached for his flashlight. He clicked it on, the beam shaky. He called out, "Anyone there?" But his voice died in the damp. He stepped inside, shoes crunching over gravel and something softer. The air smelled of mold and salt, and something else, something sweet, sickly, almost like old blood. He found himself in a low chamber, carved from stone and lined with rotted timbers. At the far end, his light caught a circle of shoes, 12, lined up in careful silence. Some were tiny Mary Janes, others the scuffed sneakers of a teenage boy, all caked in a thick layer of dust, untouched by time. Eddie's heart stuttered. Then he saw the wall behind the shoes. Words were smeared across it in a dark, glistening brown, the color of dried blood. The letters trembled in the unsteady light. We were chosen to keep the light. We never left. Eddie stumbled back, dropping his flashlight. The beam spun crazily, catching flashes of something else, drawings scratched into the stone, a spiral, stick figures, a beacon. He heard the roar of the surf, suddenly closer, and for a moment he thought he saw movement, shadows gathering in the corners, watching. He bolted out into the morning fog, stumbling up the path, heart pounding so hard he thought it would burst. The news traveled faster than the storm itself. By noon, the bluff was crawling with deputies, county investigators, and news vans. Crime scene tape flapped in the wind. The lighthouse, once a symbol of safety, now looked more like a grave marker. Sheriff Beth Hammond stood with arms folded, lips pressed tight as she listened to Eddie's babbling report. She'd lived in Willow's Reach all her life. She remembered the field trip, the 12 missing students, the way the town had gone quiet in the years after, their names still spoken in hushed, guilty tones. She remembered Emily Ward's mother, too, sobbing on the church steps after the search parties returned empty. Beth called in forensics, ordered the site sealed, and quietly made a phone call she dreaded for years. Emily Ward was upstate, finishing a dive on the edge of a kelp forest when the call came. She surfaced into sunlight, goggles fogged, wetsuit dripping. Her phone buzzed in the dry bag. Unidentified remains found. Willow's Reach, your brother's case. Come home. Emily didn't hesitate. She packed her gear in silence, hands numb. The drive south was a blur of rain and headlights, her mind replaying old images. Her brother Tommy, hair bleached by sun, grinning on the morning of the field trip, the yellow school bus pulling away, the days of searching that followed. She arrived in Willow's Reach just after sunset. The air was thick with the smell of the sea, and a crowd had gathered at the bluff, pressed against police tape. The lighthouse rose above them, skeletal against the bruised sky. Sheriff Hammond met her at the edge. Her face was older, lines deeper, but her eyes were gentle. I'm sorry, Emily. We don't have answers yet, but we found something. You should see it. They walked down the path together, past clusters of whispering townsfolk. The iron door yawned in the cliffside, lit by portable work lamps. Forensics techs worked quietly, snapping photos and dusting for prints. The air inside was colder than outside, heavy with history. The circle of shoes was still there, each pair marked and bagged. On the wall, the message remained. Blood dark and flaking. The words a wound that wouldn't heal. Emily's breath caught. The world narrowed to a tunnel. She recognized her brother's sneakers, one shoelace knotted clumsily, just as she remembered. A tech gently touched her shoulder. There's something else, he said. He led her deeper, to a smaller chamber branching off the main room. In the corner, a battered lunchbox, stickers peeling, and inside it, a faded Polaroid. 12 children, standing before the lighthouse, arms around each other, grinning in the sunlight. The picture was dated in blue ink, June 14th, 1994. On the back, scrawled in a shaky hand, "If anyone finds us, keep the light burning. Please remember our names." Emily pressed the photo to her chest, tears stinging her eyes. Outside, the first gulls screamed over the sea. The storm had passed, but Willow's Reach would not sleep easy again. The fog didn't lift the next morning. It curled thick and gray over the cliffs, muffling sound and making the world seem smaller, as if Willow's Reach were a snow globe lost in the clouds. Emily watched from her old bedroom window in her mother's house, clutching a mug of coffee she didn't remember making. Her hands trembled. She'd slept little, the image of the chamber and the ring of children's shoes etched behind her eyelids. The house felt both unchanged and alien. Her mother had moved very little. Photos still crowded the walls, including the one of Tommy grinning in his baseball uniform just a week before he disappeared. Emily traced his face with her thumb, the glass cool beneath her touch. A knock at the door startled her. Sheriff Hammond stood on the porch, hat in hand. "Morning," the sheriff said. "Didn't want to call. Thought you might want to see the site again before the press gets wind." Emily nodded. She pulled on her jacket and followed Beth out to the bluff. The path was muddy, slick with last night's rain. Work lights still flickered around the cliffside, casting the iron door in sickly yellow. They stepped inside. A forensic team was packing evidence into boxes, shoes, the lunchbox, fragments of fabric. The air was colder today, and the message on the wall looked even darker. The blood turned nearly black. Beth's deputy, a young woman named Jessa, approached with a clipboard. "We found something odd in the secondary chamber," she said quietly. "Looks like it was hidden on purpose." Emily followed, heart hammering. In a crevice behind loose stones, Jessa pulled out a small, battered notebook. Its cover was blue, decorated with faded stickers. Emily's breath caught. She remembered this notebook. It was Tommy's, a gift from their grandfather. Inside, his looping, childish handwriting ran in lines and circles, sometimes spiraling off the page. Most of it was lists, names of classmates, favorite snacks, lines of song lyrics. But in the back half, the entries changed. The handwriting grew frantic. The keeper comes at midnight. Don't look at the light. If you stay quiet, he passes by. The others are scared. Some hear music, but I don't. The shoes have to stay in the circle. If you step out, you don't come back. Emily read these words aloud, voice trembling. The room seemed to contract around her. Sheriff Hammond leaned in. Was your brother the kind to make up stories? Emily shook her head. He told the truth. Always. Jessa flipped through the rest of the notebook. One page held a crude map of the cliff, a star marking the lighthouse, and an X drawn where the chamber would have been. Next to it, a scribbled drawing of a tall figure with a round light for a head. Children huddled at its feet. The keeper, Emily whispered. The room fell silent. The only sound was the drip of water somewhere in the stone. The town was already stirring with rumor by the time they emerged. A crowd clustered at the edge of the police tape. Some faces Emily knew. Mrs. Dalrymple, who'd led the PTA fundraiser the year after the children vanished. Mr. Klein, who used to run the corner store and still wore his faded Red Sox cap. She heard the whispers. They found their shoes. All of them. Heard there was blood on the wall. Real blood. It's a curse, that lighthouse. Always was. Ben Foster leaned against his battered SUV, notepad in hand. He grinned when he saw her, though his eyes were tired. "M. Ward, back from the deep," he said. She managed a smile. "Couldn't stay away, could I?" Ben's smile faded as he fell into step beside her. "I saw the news vans pulling in from Portland. They'll want a show. The sheriff's trying to keep it quiet, but—" He trailed off, glancing at the cliffs. "Are you okay?" "No," Emily admitted. "But I will be. Listen, they found my brother's notebook. There's something in it. Something about a keeper and a ritual. Does that mean anything to you?" Ben frowned. "You know my dad used to tell stories about the old keeper who went mad. Claimed he saw ghosts every night. Said he left lights burning for them, even after the lighthouse shut down." He shivered. "I always thought it was just a ghost story." Emily handed him the notebook, flipping to the drawing of the keeper. Ben's face paled. "That's almost exactly how my dad described it," he said, voice low. "He called it the Lantern Man. Said if you saw his light, you'd be taken away." They stood in silence. Above them, gulls wheeled, their cries distant and hollow. Later that afternoon, Emily walked the perimeter of the bluff. Seagrass whipped at her legs, damp with mist. She traced the cliff's edge, pausing at the old chain-link fence that had once kept tourists from wandering too close. She closed her eyes, letting the wind press salt against her cheeks, and listened. For a moment, the hush of the fog was complete, until a faint sound reached her. A child's voice, high and thin, singing an old camp song she half remembered from field trips. She turned sharply, heart pounding. The fog shifted. For a split second, she thought she saw movement by the lighthouse door, a small shape darting through the mist. She raced toward it, boots slipping. But when she reached the door, there was only the empty path and the echo of her own breath. That night, the town's power flickered with the last gasp of the storm. Emily sat at the kitchen table, Tommy's notebook open before her, the old Polaroid beside it. She made a list of the children in the picture, writing their names in order. 12 names, each with a face she'd tried not to remember for years. She thought of their parents, the faded missing flyers, the prayer vigils that turned to anniversaries, then to silences. The notebook, the shoes, the message on the wall. It all pointed to something deliberate. Not an accident, not a tragedy of the sea. Something done and carefully hidden. Her phone buzzed. A message from Ben. "Meet me at the lighthouse. I found something." Emily grabbed her jacket, adrenaline rising, and slipped out into the fog-draped night. The lighthouse loomed above her, its windows dark. the beam long since extinguished. Ben waited at the base, flashlight in hand. "I talked to my uncle," he said, breathless. "He was on the search party back in '94. He said they never searched the old keeper's quarters. Place was locked tight, and they figured the kids wouldn't have gone inside." He handed her a heavy iron key. "He kept it. You ready?" Emily swallowed, nodded. They climbed the narrow spiral staircase, dust thick on the steps, boards creaking. The air was colder inside. At the top, Ben fumbled the key into the old lock. It turned with a shriek. Inside, the keeper's room was frozen in time. A cot with moth-eaten sheets, a desk littered with water-stained charts, and on the wall, a faded photograph of the lighthouse burning with light. Ben shone his flashlight over the walls. On the far side, someone had scratched words into the plaster. "We were chosen. The light must stay." Beneath, 12 tally marks. Emily's skin crawled. Ben found a box beneath the desk. Inside, more Polaroids, some too blurred to make out, others showing the faces of the missing children, some crying, some wide-eyed and pale. One showed her brother Tommy looking straight into the lens. On the back, a shaky scrawl. "He's coming. Don't let the light go out." Emily stared at the photograph, her pulse roaring in her ears. Something terrible had happened here, something no storm could wash away. Outside, the fog pressed closer, and in the darkness, the old light room groaned. Emily barely slept. She lay awake in her childhood bed, the old notebook and Polaroid scattered across her quilt. Wind rattled the window panes, and in the hush between gusts, she imagined voices. The distant laughter of children, the warning cry of a gull, the whispered chant. "We were chosen. The light must stay." She rose at dawn, drawn by the need to do something, anything. The house was quiet, her mother already at work at the diner. Emily left a note on the kitchen table. "Gone to the bluff. Back soon," then stepped into the fog-wet morning. She wasn't alone. Ben was waiting by the chain-link fence, eyes hollow from lack of sleep. "I've been thinking about the old stories," he said. "About the lantern man, the keeper who lost his mind. My dad always said there was a reason no one wanted to be on lighthouse duty during the equinox storms." Emily shivered. "I want to see everything they found in that chamber again. And the photos. Especially the ones of Tommy." They walked together to the bluff, where Sheriff Hammond and her deputies were already busy cataloging evidence. The county's forensics van idled nearby. Jessa greeted Emily with a nod, then led her to a folding table where artifacts were laid out. The children's shoes, the battered lunchbox, the faded Polaroids. Emily's fingers hovered over each object, careful, reverent. Jessa pulled a plastic evidence bag from the box. Inside was a thin, waterlogged diary, cover torn, pages swollen, but still intact. "We found this tucked behind a loose stone in the chamber wall," Jessa said. "It's odd. Full of sketches, codes, and entries about the light." Emily opened the diary with trembling hands. The handwriting wasn't Tommy's, but it was familiar. Small, precise, slanting forward. On the inside cover, property of Sarah Lindholm. If found, please return to room 3B, Sarah. Emily remembered her. A quiet, nervous girl, always last in line. Her mother moved away the summer after the disappearances. Emily and Ben sat on the edge of the police car, flipping through the diary. Pages alternated between diary entries and sketches. The lighthouse, the rocky cliff, a circle of children holding hands. Some entries were frantic. "The keeper came last night. He was angry. No one slept. Tommy cried. We hid our shoes, but he found them. He said the light has to stay or the tide will come for us. I think the tide is already here." Other pages were codes, numbers, cryptic sentences, strange phrases repeated over and over. "Don't let the light go out. Don't look at the beam. If you see your name in the wall, close your eyes and wait for morning." Emily traced her finger over a sketch of a girl peering from the lighthouse window as a storm crashed against the rocks below. "This isn't just a story," she said quietly. "They were scared. They thought someone, was coming for them." Ben nodded, flipping to the back pages. There, Sarah had written a list. 12 names, each with a date beside it. The first 8 dates matched the days the children vanished, one by one, in the week after the field trip. The last 4 were blank. Sheriff Hammond joined them, her expression grim. "Any luck?" Emily showed her the diary, the coded dates, the desperate pleas. The sheriff frowned. "We're running the prints and DNA. But this goes deeper than I thought. I've already heard from a man in Portland. Claims his brother disappeared here in the 70s. And I just got word from the county. The press is coming. This is going national." Emily's chest tightened. "Has anyone spoken to the old keeper's family?" Beth shook her head. "He had no kids. His wife died decades ago. His last years were hard. But the archives in the town hall might have something. I can get you access." Ben leaned closer, voice low. "If there's a pattern, if this has happened before, maybe the answers are in those old records, or in the diaries of the children left behind." Emily nodded, her resolve hardening. "I'll go to the archives. Ben, can you look up anything about Sarah's family? Maybe someone remembers her, or she left more notes." Ben nodded, already typing on his phone. The town hall stood at the edge of the square, a squat brick building with iron-bolted doors and the faint smell of mildew. Emily let herself in with the sheriff's spare key. The archive room was dim and crowded with the past. Boxes stacked to the ceiling, ledgers and newspapers, files yellowed with time. She dug through the Lighthouse folder. Newspaper clippings of shipwrecks, tourist brochures, old black and white photos. A slim manila envelope caught her eye. "Missing Children, June 1994. Inside, police reports, search maps, interview transcripts. She skimmed, her heart in her throat. One transcript caught her breath. Witness, Mrs. Francine Bell, age 84. Statement, I saw the children near the lighthouse the morning after the storm. Not all of them. A few were lined up outside, like they were waiting for something. A tall man with a lantern herded them. I thought it was a drill, but then I never saw the children again. Another. Deputy's note, June 16th. No sign of the children in the caves. The old keeper's quarters locked from inside. No footprints on the sand except those of a single adult male. Emily shivered. At the bottom of the envelope, a photograph she'd never seen. 12 children, dressed in raincoats, standing in a line at the edge of the bluff, fog swirling around their feet. At the back, a tall figure with a lamp, face hidden by the glare. On the back, written in the same small, neat script as Sarah's diary, if the light goes out, the tide will come. Don't forget us. Emily left the archive as dusk fell, the street lights flickering on one by one. Willow's reach looked unchanged. Tidy houses, kids on bikes, the distant clang of boat masts. But beneath the surface, the old secrets pressed close. Her phone buzzed. Ben. Met with Sarah's aunt. She moved back after her sister died. Says Sarah used to wake up screaming about the man with the lantern. She kept sketching the lighthouse over and over. Emily replied, found police transcripts. Witness saw a man leading the kids, morning after. Face hidden. Keeper? Has to be. I'm meeting her tomorrow. Be careful. As Emily walked home, she glanced up at the lighthouse. Its windows were dark, but for a heartbeat, just a heartbeat. She thought she saw a glimmer at the very top, a light winking in the mist. She closed her eyes. The children's names echoed in her mind, each one a stone thrown into deep water. She would not let them vanish again. A silvery dawn broke over Willow's reach. But the fog clung to the town like a memory that refused to fade. Emily sat at the kitchen table, Sarah's diary and Tommy's notebook spread before her. A web of notes and photos and half-remembered names. She traced the lines of the old map, her brother's handwriting looping around the lighthouse, a star drawn where the children's chamber had been found. The chill of the house crept into her bones. Her phone vibrated. Ben. At the church. Sarah's aunt wants to talk. Says it can't wait. Emily threw on her coat and hurried through empty streets, the hush of morning broken only by the caw of crows and the far-off shudder of a foghorn. The church was a plain wooden building, paint peeling, its steeple lost in mist. Ben stood outside, shifting his weight, a folder clutched tight in his hands. Sarah's aunt, Mrs. Atwood, she's inside, Ben whispered. She wouldn't talk on the phone, says she remembers the day Sarah disappeared. Inside, the sanctuary was cold and still. Mrs. Atwood, small and sharp-eyed, sat near the front, her hands twisting a worn handkerchief. She looked up at Emily and Ben, wary but determined. I told the police what I knew, she began, voice thin but steady. But I don't think anyone listened. Sarah. She was afraid all the time after that field trip. Kept saying they shouldn't have gone into the lighthouse, that something was waiting for them. She drew that man over and over, the keeper, always with a lantern, always with no face. Emily handed her the diary. Mrs. Atwood turned the pages slowly, lips trembling. This is hers. She used to stay up at night, writing and drawing. She said there was a ritual, that the keeper made them do it. If the light ever went out, the tide would come and take them all. Ben showed her the old photograph from the archive. Mrs. Atwood pressed a hand to her mouth. She's in the back row, right there, and that man, I never saw his face, but I always had the feeling he was watching, even after she was gone. Emily's voice was gentle. Did Sarah ever say what the ritual was? Mrs. Atwood shook her head. Only that they had to keep the shoes in a circle, sing a song when the keeper told them, and never step outside the light. She said if someone broke the circle, the keeper would take them out into the dark. She woke screaming every night for a week before she disappeared. Then one morning, she was just gone. They left Mrs. Atwood in the pews, weeping softly. Emily felt the grief lodge itself under her ribs, cold and sharp. Outside, Ben handed her the folder he'd been carrying. Newspaper clippings, he said. Found them in my dad's boxes. There's a pattern, Emily. Every 21 years there's a storm like the one that hit the night the kids disappeared. Always around midsummer, and every time someone goes missing, a fisherman, a tourist, a child. Emily rifled through the clippings. 1952. Local boy lost after storm. Last seen near Lighthouse. 1973. 2 hikers disappear, search called off. 1994. 12 students vanish, town in mourning. Her heart pounded. Do you think it's the keeper every time? Ben's voice was grave. Or someone who believes in him. Maybe a group. The ritual is their way of keeping something at bay. Or convincing themselves they can. They walked in silence toward the lighthouse, the shape of it looming over the water. Emily stopped, looking up at its blank windows. I need to go back inside, she said. Ben followed her to the door. The iron key fit the old lock with a reluctant turn. The air inside was damp, thick with the scent of mildew and salt. Emily's footsteps echoed on the stone stairs. At the top, she paused, shining her flashlight around the keeper's quarters. The walls were covered in overlapping graffiti. Names, tally marks, desperate prayers. She ran her hand over the desk, feeling for anything she might have missed. There, beneath a loose floorboard, something hard. She pried it up, heart racing. Inside was a tiny, battered music box. She wound it once. The melody that spilled out was warped and slow, but she recognized it instantly. The camp song she'd heard the day before, drifting through the fog. Ben stared. That's what Sarah's aunt said. The song they had to sing. Emily's skin prickled. Why keep it hidden? She opened the music box's lid. Tucked inside, barely visible, was a slip of paper. In a spidery hand. The ritual is broken. The keeper is angry. Don't let the light go out. Don't forget our names. We were here. We are still here. Emily's hand shook. What if the ritual wasn't to keep something out? What if it was to keep something in? Ben's reply was lost in the sudden wail of the wind outside, louder than before, rattling the windows until they shuddered. That night, as the town settled into uneasy sleep, Emily returned to the bluff. She stood in the dark, facing the lighthouse, the cold wind biting her cheeks. The sea hissed and churned below. She read the message from Sarah's diary once more. If you see your name in the wall, close your eyes and wait for morning. She whispered the names of the 12 missing children, one by one, voice lost in the mist. Far above, just for an instant, a thin beam of light swept across the waves, though the lantern room stood empty and the wiring had long since been cut. Emily watched, heart hammering, until the light vanished. She turned for home, carrying the weight of their names, the song of the music box echoing in her ears. Somewhere in the fog, the keeper watched, waiting for the ritual to begin again. Emily awoke to the shrill ring of her phone and the urgent thud of someone knocking at the front door. For a moment, she thought she'd dreamed the whole investigation. Sarah's diary, the ritual, the light at the top of the empty tower. But the chill in her bones and the ache in her heart told her it was all real. She stumbled to the door, rubbing sleep from her eyes. Sheriff Hammond stood on the porch, her face grim, her radio crackling at her hip. "Get your things," the sheriff said. "We need you at the clinic, now!" Emily grabbed her coat, pulled on yesterday's jeans, and hurried after Beth. The morning air was sharp, heavy with the promise of another storm. They drove in silence to Willow's Reach Medical Clinic. Outside, a patrol car idled. Inside, the nurse at the front desk looked up, wide-eyed. "She's still sleeping," she whispered. "But she's alive." "At least I think so." Emily's confusion must have shown on her face. Beth took her elbow and led her down a narrow hallway to an exam room at the end. "A woman was found at daybreak on the South Beach," the sheriff said quietly. Local couples saw her stumbling out of the dunes, barefoot, wearing nothing but a thin cotton dress. "She's dehydrated, half-starved, and Emily, she looks exactly like one of the missing 12. But she can't be more than 30. Emily's breath caught. That's not possible. The field trip was in 1994. She'd be in her 40s. Beth's face was pale. "I know." The nurse opened the door. The room was dim, the blinds drawn against the morning glare. On the bed lay a woman with tangled hair, her skin nearly translucent from lack of sun. Her eyes were closed, but her hands twisted the sheet with anxious strength. Emily stepped closer. The woman's eyelids fluttered, then opened, a shade of blue so pale it looked silvery in the low light. The woman blinked at Emily, her lips chapped and trembling. For a moment, no one spoke. Then she whispered, "Is it morning?" Emily nodded gently. "You're safe now. What's your name?" The woman shivered. "Sarah. My name is Sarah Lindholm." Her voice was thin, wobbly, childlike. Emily's legs nearly gave out. Beth steadied her. "Sarah, you've been missing a long time. Do you remember what happened?" Sarah's gaze went distant. She squeezed her eyes shut, as if blocking out pain. "We were in the lighthouse. There was a storm. The keeper came. He said the ritual was broken. After that, I don't remember. There were tunnels. I kept running, but every door led back to the same room. I tried to keep the light burning, but the matches were all wet." She looked at Emily, confusion and terror battling in her eyes. "Is Tommy here?" He said he'd never leave me. He tried to fix the circle, but the keeper was so angry. Emily took her hand, her own shaking. Tommy's not here, but I am. I remember you, Sarah. We're going to help you. Tears slid down Sarah's cheeks. Don't let him find me. Please, don't let the light go out. Beth stepped outside to update the hospital staff and call for a specialist. Emily sat with Sarah, holding her hand as the nurse brought water and a blanket. Sarah flinched from the bright light and pressed the cup to her lips with both hands, as if she'd forgotten how to drink. Ben arrived, breathless and wild-eyed. He peered into the room, then met Emily in the hallway. She's really Sarah Lindholm, he whispered. She hasn't aged. Emily shook her head. Not like she should have. She's lost, Ben, like time, bent around her. They stood in silence. From the room came Sarah's soft voice, repeating a rhyme Emily half remembered from her own childhood. If the keeper comes, don't make a sound. Stay in the circle, stay on the ground. Ben's jaw clenched. We need answers. Did you show her the diary? Emily shook her head. Not yet. She's fragile. But she remembers Tommy. She remembers the ritual. It's all real, Ben. Whatever happened to them wasn't natural. The sheriff returned, face set. We're moving Sarah to Portland for observation and protection. But for now, she's here. And you have maybe half an hour. Be careful what you ask. Inside, Sarah lay propped on pillows, eyes open and fever bright. Emily placed the diary on the blanket. Sarah's hands shook as she touched the cover. I hid it. I tried to remember everything. But the keeper, he didn't want us to. Emily's voice was soft. What was the ritual for, Sarah? Sarah stared at the ceiling. To keep the tide from coming. To keep the light burning. Every night we stood in the circle, held hands, and sang. The keeper watched. If you let go, you disappeared. If you stepped outside the light, you heard the sea calling your name. And if the light went out, her voice faded. He said we'd be lost forever. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I don't know how I got out. I just kept running, but the doors never led outside. Not until this morning. The circle broke years ago. The others, I think they're still lost. Some of them became part of the light. Emily wiped her tears away, her own voice trembling. Did Tommy, was he? Sarah's gaze flicked to Emily, full of grief. He tried to protect us. He was brave. He kept the song going as long as he could. The keeper was angriest with him. Ben stepped forward. Sarah, do you know what happened to the keeper? Sarah shook her head. He's still there, waiting. If the ritual ever starts again, he'll come. The nurse returned. I'm sorry, but you'll need to let her rest. Emily squeezed Sarah's hand. We won't forget you. We'll keep the light burning. I promise. As they stepped out into the hall, Emily glanced back at the frail woman in the hospital bed. One of the 12, returned from nowhere, haunted by a world that refused to let her go. The news of Sarah's reappearance swept through Willow's reach like fire on dry grass. Some called it a miracle, others, an omen. Old fears rose up and rumors spread about curses, about the price for safety, about what really lurked beneath the lighthouse. Emily stood on the bluff that evening, watching the sun melt into a sea of rolling fog. The names of the lost echoed in her mind, mingling with Sarah's voice, soft and afraid. She thought of Tommy, the circle of shoes, the flicker of light at the top of the tower. For the first time since she'd come home, she let herself believe. The truth hadn't been lost to the storm. And maybe not all of the children had either. Sarah slept for most of the day, drifting in and out of uneasy dreams. The doctors kept her on fluids and soft lights, careful not to press for answers. Emily sat by her bed for hours, reading through Sarah's diary and her own brother's notebook, listening for the small changes in Sarah's breathing, watching for any sign of peace. But peace did not come. At dusk, Sarah startled awake, eyes wild. For a moment, she seemed not to recognize Emily. then reached out, clutching Emily's hand with desperate strength. "He's still there," Sarah whispered, voice raw with memory. "The keeper, the light. I can hear them singing even now." Emily squeezed her hand gently. "Sarah, can you tell me what happened? After the storm, what do you remember?" Sarah's gaze drifted toward the window, where twilight painted the world in bruised colors. She began to speak, halting at first, then faster, as if the story had been waiting years for an ear to hear it. 29 years. Earlier, the rain had battered the windows of the lighthouse for hours, drowning out their voices. Sarah remembered the fear, the way the walls seemed to sweat with salt, and the keeper's lamp painted monstrous shapes on the stone. The children huddled together on damp blankets, 12 shadows in a circle of faint yellow light. The keeper watched from the doorway, silent and enormous, his face always just beyond the reach of the lamp. "You must keep the circle. The light must never go out. You belong to the tide now." They sang the song the keeper taught them, again and again, until the melody became a chant, until Sarah forgot what her own voice sounded like. One by one, the circle broke. A hand would slip, a voice would falter, and the keeper would come. The lamp would swing, and the missing child's place in the circle would be left empty. Some nights Sarah thought she heard the sea inside the walls, voices whispering her name, calling her to step outside the light. The keeper said if she left, she'd be lost forever. But if she stayed, she'd never be found. Tommy tried to keep hope alive. He told jokes, hummed louder when the others grew tired. He shared his lunch with Sarah, taught her a silly handshake, promised her they'd see their families again. "Don't let go, Sarah, not for anything." But the nights grew longer, the keeper's patience shorter. Then came the night the light flickered and died. The lamp's glow sputtered, and the dark rolled in like water. The keeper's voice was not angry then. It was sorrowful. "The circle is broken. The tide is coming." That was the last thing Sarah remembered before waking in darkness, alone. She ran through endless stone corridors, opening doors that led only to more empty rooms. Sometimes she saw the faces of the other children, pale and flickering in the shadows. Sometimes she heard the keeper's footsteps, heavy and slow, echoing behind her. She never found a way out until now. Present day. Sarah's story faded into silence. Emily sat, stunned, clutching her notebook. Ben, who had entered quietly and heard the end of Sarah's tale, shook his head in disbelief. "That can't be all. How did you escape?" Sarah's voice was thin. "I don't know. Sometimes the doors moved, sometimes they led back to the beginning. But this morning, I found a door that opened onto the sand. I thought I was still dreaming. I just walked and walked until someone found me." Emily stared at her brother's name in the old Polaroid, his smile forever frozen. "Did Tommy try to escape?" Sarah's gaze flickered. "He wanted to, but the keeper watched him closely. The last time I saw Tommy, he was trying to relight the lamp. He told me to run if I could." Ben spoke quietly. "There's got to be more to these tunnels. If she came out on the South Beach, there's a passage beneath the town. Something nobody's found." Emily nodded. "The keeper's quarters, the old foundation, maybe even under the school. All those places are marked in Tommy's map." Sarah's eyes fluttered closed again, exhaustion overtaking her. Emily smoothed her hair back, heart heavy. That night, Ben and Emily met at the bluff, the lighthouse a black silhouette against a sky shot through with distant lightning. "We need to find those tunnels," Emily said. "If the others are still lost, or if something else is down there, we need to know." Ben agreed. "And if there's a chance Tommy left a message, we have to try." They crept inside the lighthouse, guided only by flashlights. In the keeper's room, Emily ran her hands over the stones, searching for seams or loose bricks. Her fingers caught on a jagged crack. She pressed, and a small section of wall shifted, revealing a narrow stairwell spiraling down into darkness. A gust of cold, salty air hit them, carrying with it the faintest trace of music, a warped version of the camp song, echoing from somewhere below. They descended, breath held, boots scraping over ancient steps. Below, the tunnels branched out, walls scrawled with chalk and charcoal. Keep the circle. Don't let the light go out. They followed the echoes deeper, past collapsed beams and rooms full of rotting cots, until they reached a sealed iron door. Someone, maybe a child, had written a name over and over on the metal. Tommy Ward, Tommy Ward, Tommy Ward. Emily pressed her hand to the door, her voice barely a whisper. Tommy? A cold draft blew from the seams, and for just a moment, Emily thought she heard a boy's voice on the other side, singing softly, "If the keeper comes, don't make a sound." Ben gripped her shoulder. "We're not alone down here." A shudder ran through Emily, but she squared her shoulders, determination hardening in her chest. "We keep going. For Sarah, for Tommy, for all of them." As they turned back toward the stairwell, Emily glanced over her shoulder, heart racing. Somewhere in the dark, the keeper waited. But so did hope. The tunnels beneath Willow's reach were colder than the ocean, older than the town itself. Emily and Ben moved cautiously, every step sending echoes into the dark, as if announcing their presence to something that waited, patient and hungry. Emily's flashlight beam flicked across crumbling brick and rusted pipes, illuminating names scratched in the mortar. Some she recognized from old photos, others lost to time. "Keep the circle. Don't let the light go out." Repeated again and again. Some carved deep in panic, others barely traced, desperate marks left behind by frightened hands. Their footsteps grew softer as the air thickened. Ben checked his phone's compass. No signal, but a sense of heading downward, deeper into the earth. "We shouldn't be here," Ben whispered, his breath fogging. "If these tunnels connect to the beach and the keeper's quarters, who built all this, and why?" Emily ran her fingers along a narrow shelf, feeling old wax drippings, as if candles had burned here night after night. She imagined the 12 children, huddled in fear, singing their fractured song to keep the dark at bay. They passed collapsed beams, rotten timbers black with age, and old, sodden blankets. Once, Emily's light swept over a doll's head, its plastic features warped by time and damp. She shivered and pressed on. At a fork, a faint draft tugged at Emily's hair, and the music, faint but distinct, echoed from the left-hand passage. She and Ben exchanged a look and followed it, each footstep a silent promise. The passage narrowed, ending at a heavy wooden door. Someone, some child, had scrawled a new phrase on the wood, over and over. "He's coming! Stay in the light!" Emily hesitated, then pressed the door. It creaked open, revealing a chamber larger than any they'd seen, a kind of underground dormitory. Against one wall, bunk beds sagged, their mattresses eaten by mold. The opposite wall was covered in drawings, layers of children's graffiti, ships, lighthouses, a man with a lantern, circles of stick-figure children, their hands joined. But at the center, painted in broad, frantic strokes, was something new. A swirling vortex of blue and black, a lighthouse caught in a storm, and at its center, a ring of 12 shadowy figures. Emily stepped closer, her heart pounding. Tucked into a crack in the mural's frame was a folded slip of paper. She pulled it free, careful not to tear it. Ben read over her shoulder. "We're still here. The keeper is angry. If you find this, please remember our names. Tommy." Emily felt the world tilt, grief and hope tangling inside her. He left this for someone, anyone who might find it. Ben squeezed her shoulder. He never gave up. Maybe some of the others didn't either. They turned to leave and froze. In the corridor, another light bobbed. A flashlight, jittery and frantic, not one of theirs. A voice echoed, young and terrified. "Hello? Mom? Is anyone there?" Ben cursed under his breath. "That's Jamie Miller. She's 11. Her family's renting the Bauer house for the summer. She wasn't here in '94. What's she doing down here?" Emily's blood went cold. "The cycle. Someone else is being pulled in." They hurried into the corridor, calling Jamie's name. The girl's sobs echoed through the stone. Emily found her crouched in a small alcove, knees drawn to her chest, tears streaming down her face. "I got lost," Jamie whispered. "There was a voice. I followed it. It sounded like a boy singing. I thought it was my brother. Then I couldn't get back out." Ben wrapped his arms around her, soothing her as Emily checked for injuries. "You're safe now. We're here." But as they retraced their steps, the way twisted. The passage that should have led back to the stairs seemed to curve instead, looping them in circles. Jamie clung to Emily's hand, eyes squeezed shut. Finally, after what felt like hours, Emily spotted a sliver of daylight, a grate high in the wall, letting in the weak morning sun. Ben managed to pry it loose, and one by one they scrambled through, tumbling into a tangle of weeds behind the old school. Back in daylight, Jamie clung to her mother, shaking with sobs. Emily met Beth Hammond at the school parking lot, explaining what had happened in as few words as possible. Beth's face hardened. "That's the third time this summer a child's wandered off and come back with stories of tunnels, singing, and someone with a lantern. It's starting again." Ben nodded grimly. "The keeper's not finished. Not until the ritual is broken for good." Emily handed Beth the note from Tommy, voice trembling. "He's still down there somehow, or part of him is." Beth promised to have every tunnel entrance bricked up, but Emily knew it wasn't enough. "He found a way out once. The circle is broken, but the story keeps going. It's not the tunnels, it's the remembering." That night, the fog rolled in thicker than ever. Emily stood at the window, music box open on her desk, its haunting melody drifting through the room. She wrote the 12 names on a slip of paper and set it beside the music box. She whispered their names, again and again, a litany against the dark. In the distance, the lighthouse beacon flickered to life, a light that had no power, no source. For a moment, Emily saw 12 small figures on the cliff, their hands joined, singing into the storm. She watched until the light faded, and promised herself she would not stop. Not until every child's name was spoken in the morning sun. The next morning, Willow's Reach was buzzing, rumor and dread riding the salt wind. Word had spread about Jamie Miller's disappearance and return, and parents kept their children inside. Sheriff Hammond coordinated crews to brick up every visible tunnel entrance, but whispers swirled that some passages ran deeper, older than anyone realized. Emily paced her mother's kitchen, the slip of paper with 12 names tucked in her pocket. Every so often she checked her phone for updates from the hospital. Sarah still slept, locked in a cycle of restless dreams. Ben arrived, mud still caked on his boots from the tunnels. "The library's archivist found something," he said. "I think you need to see it." They hurried to the town library, where Mrs. Haskell, the archivist, waited beside a heavy, dust-coated box. "These are old ledgers from the Lighthouse's last working years," she explained, sliding a brittle book across the table. "And this," she handed Emily a black, cloth-bound journal, its corners soft with age. On the first page, in a faded, spidery hand, "Property of Elias March, Keeper of the Light, Willow's Reach." Emily and Ben sat together, reading by the library's window as the fog rolled past outside. The entries spanned decades, routine logs about weather, repairs, fuel levels. But then, the tone shifted. "Storm coming, children's laughter in the night. She says I must keep the light burning or the tide will come. I'm so tired. Why can't anyone else hear them? Ben frowned. Who's she? They turned the page. The entries became more desperate. The council came again tonight. They say it is time. The light must not fail. Children chosen. If we keep the ritual, the sea will spare us. The boy tried to run. He would not hold hands. They took him. I heard him singing in the dark after. God forgive me. I am only the keeper. Emily's stomach twisted. It wasn't just one man. The whole town was in on it. Some kind of ritual to keep the town safe. Sacrifice. Ben nodded grimly. And when it went wrong in '94, the story was buried. The missing were blamed on the storm. Further in the journal, Elias March's entries grew more erratic. Obsessed with the light, with the children's names, with keeping the sea at bay. There were references to the original tunnels, built during Prohibition, later used for rites of remembrance. The town council was named, again and again, as the Circle. Emily's hands shook. They thought if they kept the circle, the keeper would spare them. But something went wrong. The keeper became the monster they feared. Ben ran a hand through his hair. And now, the town's history is repeating itself. The kids are hearing the old songs. Jamie Miller was almost lost, by accident or because something's trying to finish what was started. Emily stood, heart pounding. If the council is still around, or their families are, maybe someone knows how to end this. Really end it. We need to confront them. Ben nodded. But tonight, there's another storm. The forecasts are the worst in years. They left the library as the first drops of rain began to fall, hurrying to the town hall. Sheriff Hammond met them inside, her expression drawn. I read the journal, she said, voice hard. I checked records. The council's last living member is Mrs. Dalrymple. She'll speak to you, but not here. She said to meet her at the church. She has something to confess. As thunder rolled in the distance, Emily and Ben walked to the church. The sanctuary was dark except for a single candle flickering on the altar. Mrs. Dalrymple sat in the front pew, hands trembling. She didn't look up as they entered. It was never supposed to go that far, she whispered. The circle was just meant to be a story, a way to keep children from wandering the cliffs. But after the first big storm, the council, we became afraid. People began to believe the keeper would punish us if the ritual wasn't kept. Her voice cracked. When the children disappeared in '94, some of us suspected the truth, that someone on the council had taken it too far. I tried to tell the sheriff, but I was told to keep quiet. I'm so sorry. I should have spoken sooner. Emily sat beside her. How do we end it? Mrs. Dalrymple shook her head. I don't know. Maybe you can't. Maybe the only way is to remember all their names, to speak them, to keep the light burning until the storm passes. Thunder cracked above, rattling the windows. Rain battered the roof. Emily stood, determination hardening in her chest. I'm going to the lighthouse. If there's a way to finish this, it's there. Ben followed her into the storm, the wind tearing at their coats. The lighthouse loomed above them, beam dark, its doors groaning in the gale. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of salt and old secrets. Emily climbed the spiral stairs, her hands shaking, the slip of paper with the 12 names clenched tight in her fist. At the top, she struck a match and lit the old lantern. Its golden glow filled the glass room, painting their shadows against the stone. Emily raised her voice, speaking each name, one by one, her words lost and then carried by the howl of the wind. Tommy Ward, Sarah Lindholm, Michael Tran, Jamie Brooks, Olivia Perez, Kayla Shaw, Ethan Grant, Ava Monroe, Jason Lee, Rachel Bloom, Ben Wallace, Lily Green. As she finished, lightning split the sky. The wind screamed, rattling the glass, and in the flicker of the lantern's glow, Emily saw them. A circle of children, translucent, hands joined, eyes wide and unafraid. They smiled at her, their mouths forming the words of the old camp song. Ben gripped her hand, trembling. "Do you see them?" Emily nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I do." The circle of children shimmered and faded as the storm began to ease. The lantern's light held steady, no longer flickering. For the first time in a generation, the storm rolled past Willow's reach without claiming a soul. Back on the ground, Emily hugged Ben, exhausted and shaking. "We broke the cycle," she whispered. "By remembering." Ben nodded, voice raw. "And by refusing to let them be forgotten." The rain eased, leaving the lighthouse standing tall, its light shining steady across the water. In the silence that followed, Emily felt something loosen inside her, a grief that had weighed her down since the day her brother vanished. And for the first time, she let herself believe that the lost might truly find their way home. Thunder still echoed over Willow's reach, but the worst of the storm had passed. The lighthouse lantern burned steady and gold through the breaking mist, a beacon in a world washed clean by rain. All through the village, lights flickered back on. Parents held their children tight, and an uneasy peace settled where fear had ruled. Emily had not left the lighthouse tower. She stood alone now, Ben keeping watch at the base, her hands pressed to the warm glass, letting the lamp's glow steady her breath. Below, the names she'd spoken hung on her lips. A mantra, a plea, a promise. A cold wind snaked around her ankles. Somewhere behind, on the landing, she heard a soft child's laugh. She turned, every hair rising, and saw a flicker in the shadows, a shape, small and blurred by tears. Tommy, her brother, as he'd been at 11. Sun-bleached hair, muddy sneakers, that familiar crooked grin. He wasn't alone. The circle of children stood around him, hand in hand, shimmering as if half made of fog and lamplight. Some faces she recognized from faded photos. Others seemed impossibly young or impossibly old, as if time had bent around them all. Tommy's voice was a whisper and a song, drifting on the hush. "You found us. You remembered." He glanced back at the children. "We kept the light as long as we could. Now you have to keep it for us." Emily's tears blurred everything, but she smiled, her heart aching with a joy that felt almost like pain. "I will. I promise. You're safe now." The children nodded. As one, they turned to the window, gazing out at the gray sea. Their forms faded with the dawn. But Tommy lingered just a moment longer. "Thank you, Em," he said. "Don't let them take the light away. Not for anyone. Not ever again." Then he was gone, the laughter and singing trailing away, replaced by the hush of the world waking up. On the ground, Ben met Emily with a blanket and a mug of strong coffee. "You were up there a long time," he said. Worry and relief mingled in his eyes. "I saw them," Emily said softly. "All of them. Tommy, he was with the others. I think they're free." Ben gripped her shoulder. "If anyone deserves to be free, it's them." Sheriff Hammond and Mrs. Dalrymple arrived, breathless from their climb, carrying the last of the council records. Together they pored over the pages, matching names and dates, finally filling in gaps that had haunted the town for generations. Among the papers, Ben found an old, dust-caked radio transmitter. The council had used it to send emergency signals to passing ships, but the logbook showed one signal sent out the night of the children's disappearance. Never acknowledged, never received. Emily flicked the switch. The device crackled, then buzzed to life. "This is Willow's reach light. If anyone is out there, if anyone remembers, send us a sign." A long silence followed, then a faint, distant reply. A child's voice, maybe only static, maybe something more. "We are still here. Don't forget us." The lamp above them burned bright, steady as the rising sun. The next day, townsfolk gathered at the lighthouse. Emily read out the 12 names. Candles were lit, photos pinned to the walls, letters written to the lost, placed at the base of the old tower. For the first time, the town mourned together, not in shame or secrecy, but in memory and hope. Sarah Lindholm was moved to a hospital in Portland, her story now the center of state investigation. She might never remember all the years she lost, but she woke each morning and asked for sunlight, for names, for music. Jamie Miller, the girl who had been lost in the tunnels, began drawing lighthouses, always with 12 small lights inside. Sheriff Hammond reopened every cold case that touched the cliffs or the sea. Mrs. Dalrymple, frail but resolute, made her last act as council member a full confession to state investigators, telling the truth about the rituals, the fear, the lies. Ben wrote the story for the local paper, then for a national audience. Emily, at last, found herself able to walk the cliff's edge in daylight, unafraid. On the last night before she left for the city, Emily climbed the lighthouse one more time. The lamp was off, her hands on the switch. She whispered, "For the lost, for the found, for the light we keep burning." And for the first time in decades, she let the darkness return. But the names she'd spoken echoed on, and the morning brought only peace. Morning dawned clear and bright over Willow's Reach. The air smelled of rain and salt. The last traces of storm washed away. The town felt different now, lighter, quieter. Where once there had been only silence and secrets, there was conversation and the soft hum of life returning. Emily walked along the bluff, her shoes leaving dark impressions in the damp grass. The lighthouse stood behind her, tall and weathered but shining in the sun. She glanced back only once, smiling at the sight of children playing near the fence, their laughter rolling freely across the fields. Down in the harbor, people hung fresh bunting and flowers. The annual summer festival, canceled for years after the disappearances, would finally happen again. The air buzzed with the promise of a new beginning. Ben met her at the end of the dock, holding 2 cups of coffee. His eyes looked clearer than they had in weeks. "Thought you might want to see this," he said, handing her the second cup. "The council voted. The lighthouse is now a memorial, officially. They're putting up a plaque with all 12 names." Emily felt tears prick her eyes. "It's about time." They walked together to the base of the lighthouse, where townspeople were already gathered. Sheriff Hammond stood beside Mrs. Dalrymple, who was leaning on her cane, looking tired but content. The ceremony was simple. A few words, the unveiling of the plaque, and a moment of silence. Emily read the names aloud, her voice steady, even when she spoke Tommy's. Families placed photos and wildflowers on the stones around the tower. The sun glinted off the lantern glass above, and for a moment, a flock of gulls wheeled and called, like a blessing. Later, Emily wandered through the town, pausing outside the old school. She found Jamie Miller and her friends drawing on the sidewalk with colored chalk. Lighthouses, stars, circles of stick-figured children holding hands. Jamie looked up and grinned. "I made sure there are 12 lights," she said proudly, "so nobody gets lost." Emily crouched beside her. "That's perfect." Sarah Lindholm, recovering in Portland, sent a letter to Emily. Her handwriting was shaky, but her words were clear. "Dear Emily, some mornings I wake and I think I'm still there, in the dark. But then the sunlight comes through the window, and I hear someone say my name. I'm starting to remember songs, faces, hope. I think that's what keeps me going, knowing someone out there remembered me. Thank you for keeping the light burning. Love." Sarah Emily read the letter beneath the lighthouse, letting the wind carry Sarah's hope out to sea. The story of the missing 12 and the keeper of Willow's Reach spread beyond the town. Reporters came and went, but they found a community determined to tell the truth, not hide it. Other families came forward. Old secrets were finally laid to rest, and for the first time in a generation, Willow's Reach looked outward, not just back. Ben's article was published, then syndicated, then optioned for a documentary. but he said the best thing he ever wrote was the short inscription carved into the plaque beneath the lighthouse. In memory of the missing to those who waited in the dark. Your names are remembered. The light is kept. That fall, Emily packed her car to leave Willow's reach. Her mother hugged her tightly, whispering, "Come back when you can. This will always be your home." At the edge of town, Emily stopped her car and looked back one last time. The lighthouse stood, a sentinel on the cliffs, its lantern now a beacon of remembrance, not fear. As she drove away, she saw, just for a moment, a group of children on the bluff, hands joined in a circle, sunlight making them almost transparent. At their center, Tommy waved, his grin wide and real. Emily smiled through tears and kept driving, the road unwinding ahead, the future open and bright. Years later, new children played at the base of the lighthouse, tracing their names in the dust, telling ghost stories as dusk settled. Sometimes, when the fog rolled in and the lantern shone, they claimed to hear faint singing, a melody older than memory, full of names and light. But the adults only smiled and let them play, knowing the past had been faced and the lost had finally come home. And above it all, the lighthouse kept its silent vigil, a promise written in stone and sea. No one here would ever be forgotten again.